Well, hello. I'll start today's severe weather outlooks with a review of some of the reports. As you know from yesterday, it was forecast to be a pretty big day, and it turned out that quite a few tornadoes did form. Here's a kind of a survey of some of them. This was the main emphasis area. So here's Springfield, Illinois, here in Decatur. So you see some funnel cloud reports with some of those initial storms and some of the ones that kind of came up from behind. But right around here is the Effingham area and also Charleston, and also a report of a tornado between Terre Haute and Indianapolis along the interstate there. So that was one set of, and the most advertised tornado portion of yesterday, and it worked out to be a pretty good forecast. It was right near where it was forecast to be. And then we go down here. So this is Montgomery, Alabama, at the top of your map here, and Tallahassee's right here. So we had some reports right around Enterprise, Mississippi last night. Now this was in connection with the very favorable conditions being put forth by Arthur. If you recall on yesterday's show, we talked about, not to ignore the tornado threat down here, even though everybody's talking about Illinois and Missouri and Indiana, and rightly so. But this turned out to be accurate. And also, a few days ago, ahead of the surface low, there was a little bit of a kind of a blip of tornado possibility. Sure enough, we had one with a brief but pretty intense little report on radar of a tornado. So, for reference, here's Dubuque, Iowa, and here's Madison, Wisconsin. So, and this is the Mississippi River. So that was that report. Then we'll look at the wind reports. This was yesterday morning's little mini derecho that moved through. And if you'll see, there was a 94 mile per hour wind gust there northeast of Des Moines. Lots of 70 mile per hour wind gusts in this. That would be the slightly deeper red, like this one, 75, 73. And then, of course, that was a separate issue. Then these storms here produced a lot more than that. This was from the morning, I believe. And then this stuff was the new set of winds that were reported with the second round of storms with the tornadoes, and that also carried over into around the Ohio River from Louisville up to around the Cincinnati area. So for June, anytime you introduce a strong jet stream, especially a west-northwest one, over humid, unstable air, this is going to happen. And yeah, it did. So let's take a look at the thunderstorm risk today. This has all been cleared out for the most part, this area. We still have a marginal risk kind of hanging back through Missouri, Arkansas, into Oklahoma, and even into Texas. But the hot spots, so to speak, are the yellow areas. That's the level 2 out of 5. Now, remember, yesterday's had gotten up to a level 4 in this area here. So level 2 means the coverage won't be as intense, but quite a bit of area covered by this. Now, the tornado threats are interesting because we still have a pretty good tornado threat with the remnants of that tropical storm. And also, this has kind of been on and off with tornado threats up in New England. Let's take a look at each of those individually. First of all, you should know there's a 10% risk of a tornado in this area here from Gulfport, just north of Pensacola, certainly Mobile, and up into that portion of southern Alabama for this morning. And that is ongoing. So if we take a look at the radar, and just keep in mind when you watch this, it could be 12 hours later. Okay. But this is taken at 8:48 this morning. You can see the tornado warnings south and east of Hattiesburg in this area here, Wiggins, and this is all moving in this direction, of course. Then up in New England, we have that 5% tornado risk. That does include upstate New York, Syracuse, Albany, every point north of there, Burlington, Vermont is in there, and a little bit of Massachusetts too, and that's a 5% risk for later today. And if we take a look at NATOcast, it verifies the tornado risk potential, maybe brings it a little more south into Massachusetts than the SPC has, and puts the 15% risk, again, right ahead of those thunderstorms I just showed you. As far as other severe weather, pretty wind is the only thing that's really showing up. And usually I don't show these until they get to at least 15%. And it does here through the heart of Virginia, parts of West Virginia, maybe South Carolina, but up through Washington and the Beltway here, New York, Boston, Portland, Maine, Burlington, Albany, and Syracuse, all in that severe wind risk, 15% chance within a 25-mile radius. Now on Friday, we have marginal risk areas, so things are simmering down a little bit. We had this belt of marginal risk that runs through North Florida at the coastal areas of the Carolinas and all the way back to Dallas, and another small area up there around Minnesota and Wisconsin. If we look at CSU's outlook, it doesn't really talk too much about this area at all up here, but it does kind of highlight a wind and a hail risk in various spots but is not really gung-ho on a lot of severe weather for tomorrow. Then on Saturday, this has been showing up for the last couple of days. There's a severe storm risk that goes up to a level 2 out of 5 through North Platte, Kearney, Nebraska in this, Sterling, up in northeast Colorado, Salina, Hayes along I-70 there, and Garden City all in that highest risk. The tornado risk is put by CSU as a 5% risk in that exact area. And SPC doesn't do that type of risk on day 3 yet, so it wouldn't show up. But on the hail side of things, looks pretty intense. We've got 30% possibilities there, and the wind is equally so. And then on Sunday, this is kind of an interesting system. This actually does affect the Ozarks, although the SPC, if they had pulled the trigger on anything, it would show up here. So this is the 15% chance, and when they do that forecast, the SPC, they only go 15 and 30. So in other words, the yellow and then that red I showed you on the previous example. So they haven't done anything here yet, but be advised, Ohio River Valley, central and southern Missouri, northern Arkansas, back and through the plains, could see some activity. That's on Sunday. And then on Monday, it kind of shifts ever so slowly southward. And then on the days after that, I just didn't see any significant chances this far out of anything. The supercell composite for the next 7 days is pretty much where I just showed you those outlooks are going to be hanging out. They don't really emphasize the Nebraska part of it too much on Saturday, but there's a little blip there. And then the week after that, this gets into early July on just kind of this belt here in the Central Plains that things still could be active. And notably, there's this little supercell belt there right around Maryland and New Jersey and Delaware for that period. And then wholly into July now, the 2nd through the 8th, we have the highest supercell composite showing up here in Montana into Canada, but a significant little area there kind of back through Iowa and into Illinois.